trading trend continuations. And before we get into this, let me recite a very popular proverb when it comes to trading. The trend is your friend. You must have heard that before. It's quite popular. I've used it many times. The trend is your friend, but of course you can always think this a bit further. The trend is your friend until it bends and ends. There's no guarantee that the trend will continue, of course. The chances are elevated that it will continue, but there are no guarantees. Eventually every trend will come to an end. All right. So, but how can we use this idea of trend trading in a smart way? Because we want to be smart about trend trading. We don't want to enter into a trend trade arbitrarily, because there are good moments to enter into a trend trade and there are not so good moments. Luckily, we have tools which will help us or guide us to find these better moments into a trend trade. So one such tool is, for example, our trend radar indicator. You can see it down here. And I took this screenshot this morning on MNQ, the Nasdaq Micro Futures on the 1 minute time frame. My first takeaway is whatever you're going to see right now, we're going to cover today, works on the very small time frames just as well as on the much longer time frames. This works on any time frame basically. So this is about trend trading. The cool thing about trend trading is we can identify trends quite easily using our trend radar indicator. For example, if we are looking for symbols which are bullish right now, trending bullish, all we need to do is to find or to apply trend radar to the chart and look for areas which are predominantly green. You can see this area here. Oh, we're bullish here, or back here, predominantly green. These are areas where the market is trending bullish. And of course, if the area is predominantly reddish, that's an area where, the trend is bearish right now. So we're looking for these areas to find what is the overarching trend. And it changes. It will not last forever. You can see it here. We went from bullish to bearish and then to bullish again. But how can we trade this? And once again, we want to be smart about this. We don't just want to arbitrarily jump into a trend trade. We want to wait, and I mentioned this before, we want to wait for a pullback. And these pullbacks manifest themselves with these little red patches on our trend radar indicator. So predominantly green, but every once in a while we get these red patches, so you can see it here. That's a pullback. This is a pullback here. This is a pullback. And you can see if you look at price action here, prices came down a little bit. Came down within an overarching uptrend, within a predominant uptrend. And we want to wait for these pullbacks to occur before considering going long. That's going to be our precondition for today. And let's just assume for now, all my examples here are for the bullish case, but it works just the same way for the bearish case as well. All right, so what you saw here on the 1 minute time frame works exactly the same way on a much larger time frame. This is Casey's General Stores on the daily time frame. Same principle. Just by looking at trend radar down here, what's the predominant color that you see? Well, it's green, meaning, and of course, you don't need a PhD in finance for this, meaning this stock is in an uptrend. And once again, we want to be smart about entering into this uptrend. We want to wait for these red patches to occur, for prices to come down a little bit. You can see it here, come down a little bit. And then we want to enter in the direction of the trend. This is going to be our approach, but we're going to fine tune it. But that's our basis. The cool thing is, this works on every time frame. The 1 minute time frame, the 5 minute time frame, the daily time frame, the monthly time frame. It's always the same pattern. We want to look for what is the predominant color, green or red. In this case, it's green, and then we are waiting patiently. We're sitting on our hands for these red patches to creep in. This is where we pay attention. All right, so beautiful. Works on all time frames. It's a lock. Of course not. Now, there are no guarantees in trading. You know this already. There are no locks, yeah? And what can happen is, for example, this here. This is silver on the daily time frame, D1. Once again here, we saw these pullbacks coming in. The predominant color was green. Now you can see these pullbacks came in. It worked nicely. It worked nicely until this happened here. before, at this time here, we didn't know it's going to go all red here. The predominant color is going to be red soon completely. We didn't know this. We could have assumed, okay, at this point here, prices showed us this little pullback, these 4 levels down here. Hey, perhaps this is just another pullback within the predominant uptrend. But of course, in this case, in silver, we know this developed into a trend reversal. The bullish trend reversed into something bearish. So this is an example where this would have failed. But guess what? There is something that we can do to avoid, to some degree, these trend reversals. Because when the trend reversal occurs, our whole idea of trading a pullback will fail. It will break apart. But we can do something to avoid these trend reversals. And what we can do is to wait for confirmation. We are using another indicator which gives us confirmation. Hey, this pullback has now come to an end, and the overarching trend, the predominant trend, is going to continue. This is something we can leverage as traders to wait for confirmation. Sometimes this is also called confluence. We're using multiple indicators to come together to forecast the same future price direction, to increase the odds that, hey, we're going to be on the right-hand side of that trade, on the right side of that trade. Enter divergence cloud, an indicator designed to give us this confirmation. In fact, it's a very versatile indicator. It does lots of things, but it can give us the extra confirmation that we need in various ways. It's a very powerful indicator. And how you can use it, we're going to see in a second. So what does divergence cloud do? It's an indicator based on the concept of, well, divergence. And if you know what divergence is, you probably have heard it before, it's a disagreement between price action and an underlying oscillator. And in our case, and in the case of divergence cloud, the underlying oscillator is what we call volatility momentum. We're looking at price volatility. And if there's a disagreement between where price is going and this underlying oscillator, we have a disagreement, and oftentimes a sign that, hey, something is up. Something is about to change. But what do we want to change in this case? Let's think about this for a second. Let me go back here. We don't want this entire trend to reverse. This is not what we're looking for. What we are looking for is for confirmation that a pullback, where price came down a bit, you can see it here, came down a bit, has come to an end. This temporary bearish move, if you're looking for long entries, this temporary bearish move has come to an end, and the bullish trend, which existed prior to this, is replacing this temporary bearish move. This is what we're going to be using Divergence Cloud for, to find us the end of a pullback before the overall trend is going to continue. This is what we're going to be using this indicator for. All right. Now, here's an example how this can work. So let's once again look for silver. I have our trend radar indicator here. Now I'm going to add our Divergence Cloud indicator to this mix. We can see it here. All right, the indicator is now applied, and you can see it will give us every once in a while these bullish entry sequences, these bigger triangles here, because that's our trade direction. And if we combine these entry signals with what we see on trend radar and what our forecast is, in this case, the forecast, at least in these areas here, is that, hey, we want to enter, well, the trend is bullish, we're waiting for a pullback and the end of this pullback. If you combine this information, you can filter out a lot of bad signals off trend radar. And if you look at this one here, the last signal that creeped in, well, not creeped in, but occurred, was this long entry signal here, which still would have worked out nicely. Prices went up. And then later on, when we had this next pullback here, which resulted eventually into a complete trend reversal, look what happened here with Divergence Cloud. No more entry signals were fired. Do you see this here? So we would have avoided this. And this is possible by combining these two indicators together. Trend radar for the overall trend direction, for finding pullbacks, and Divergence Cloud for giving us extra confirmation. Now, let's check this out together. All right, so how does it look on TradingView? So I'm going to switch over now to TradingView. There we go. And we're going to start with a very small time frame. In fact, let me actually go quickly to MNQ here. On the 1 minute time frame, this is going to be for scalping, for very fast-paced trading. Let's see what can we see here. So I'm going to add, first of all, our indicators to the mix. So you can see it here, Divergence Cloud is already applied. This indicator here, I'm just going to quickly check if the settings are proper. Perfect. And I'm going to also now add Trend Radar to the mix. All right. There we go. Trend Radar. 1 second. There we go. So now we have both indicators applied. Let's see if we can make sense of it. I'm just going to stay with the example of MNQ here. What do we see, for example, here in the last hour or 2 hours? What is the predominant trend direction just by looking at Trend Radar? Wow. You don't need to be a quant to see this. It's predominantly green, meaning we are in an uptrend. All right, perfect. And every once in a while, we see these red patches creeping in. These are pullbacks. So if you combine this now with what we see here on Divergence Cloud, these entry signals, look what kind of quality signals we can get. For example, here after this pullback, our prices came back a little bit, a level 3 pullback. 1 bar later, we get the long entry signal. That's our confirmation. Okay. Later on here, another pullback and another long entry signal, confirmation that this pullback here has come to an end and the overarching trend is likely to continue. This one here, look at this bearish signal here. Would we have taken this? Probably not, because it would go against what we see here in Trend Radar. This would not be confluence. The two indicators would not agree with each other. But here, this bullish signal here, would we have taken this after this pullback? Absolutely. Now on this 1 minute time frame. And this is exactly how these two indicators can be combined together. And the cool thing is, you can also set alerts for this. But before we do this, I want to show you one more thing. So we now can see confirmation here in terms of these entry signals. But there's one more thing we can look at. And this comes all the way up here in this top right corner. Look what we see in this row here. So this is a little panel or box displayed by our Divergence Cloud indicator. Gives you all kinds of statistics. It tells you, hey, how many signals did we get in the long and short direction? What is the overarching win rate? And what is the profit factor? And what's important here is the split between long direction and short direction. We can see here, for example, for the long direction, the profit factor is 1.75 of these green signals here. Once again, another layer of confirmation. Okay, not only are we overall bullish as per Trend Radar, not only have we seen a pullback, not only have we seen a long entry signal, but also the profit factor of these long entry signals over the last 1,000 bars, that's our look back period here, has been 1.75, which is or indicates a profitable trading system. The higher, the better. Everything above 1 is deemed to be profitable. So you can put all these things together to identify interesting trades. Now, there's one more thing, and we just made this available because of changes in TradingView. It was not possible up until today to set alerts for these long entry signals as per our Divergence Cloud indicator or any of our power bundle indicators indeed. You can see that coming in here. These are my alerts. I'm going to look at this in a second. Let me first show you how these alerts can be set. And for this, I need to explain one more thing. By default, the indicator has auto optimization enabled. So this setting here is set to yes. Now, once I do this, the signals are going to be different on my chart because now they're auto optimized. Auto optimization right now is not compatible with TradingView alerts. So if you want the alerts to work, you first of all need to disable auto optimization. This may seem like a big shortcoming, but we actually have a solution for this as well, why we believe this is, not such a shortcoming at all. We'll get to this in a second. So I'm going to disable auto optimization. What that means is we will use, in this case, the default settings to find our signals, or you can customize them as well manually here. So these settings here will now be used to generate our entry signals. So auto optimization is off. Once this is off, you can now define your alerts by simply going to the alerts box here. You pick the symbol, in this case MNQ, but what I like to do is to put it on an entire watch list for all my future symbols, for example, futures. You then pick Divergence Cloud, and this is also new. We have now added an option here to get alerts for long entries, for the green signals here, for short entries, these ones here, or for any entry, long or short. And I like this one here because, it's less tedious. You don't have to define these individually now. You can just pick here any entry. And look what happened right here. We just got one here. Long entry signal on MNQ. And if you look at my alerts here, there, it's right there. It just came in. What a coincidence. And in fact, this is tradable. This is tradable. This is now a long entry signal, which is aligned with trend radar following after a minor pullback here. So this is something which you can execute either on the very small time frames, but also on the larger time frames. This is the idea of combining both trend radar and Divergence Cloud to find trend continuations, to enter into a trend trade in a smart way. When we've seen a pullback, confirmed by an entry signal of Divergence Cloud, showing us, hey, this pullback now has come to an end and the overarching trend is going to continue. That's the idea.